Hallo miteinander, I'm G86 and this is Tenjou no Tempest. Last time we kicked many an ogre's butts and made our way back to the surface safely. Sounds like a reason to rejoice, but it is not. The tremors are getting stronger and more frequent. The epicenter is likely at the mountain's summit. The way up there is a treacherous one, and will lead us through the territories of Kappa, Tenjou, and even the gods of ancient times. We likely won't encounter all of them in this game, but still, we're in for a rough time. You see, Stage 5 is terrible. Don't misunderstand, I don't mean bad by design. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's great, but it's also very, very hard. It wants your head. We're about to face the meanest of critters, see puzzles around every corner, and there's even some very unforgiving platforming. It shouldn't be much of a surprise though, since Stage 5 is the last real level of the game. It's only natural that it would hold the most devious ideas that Lionheart could think of. If not now, then when? One of said ideas is the purple Kedama. They are everywhere around this place, and have scored way high in my list of most hated enemies of this game. What's so very special about them, you may ask? At first sight, not all that much. Think of them as the boring white Kedama, except overdosed on steroids to the extent that you can't even compare them anymore. They have become far more aggressive and will always rush for you twice with their attacks. They really wouldn't be all that bad, but they are rarely alone. They love sneaking in from behind while other enemies distract you. And that kind of cheapness is what gives them strength in numbers. So, we know that things are going to get tough, but actually, they already kind of are. The first segment of Stage 5 is probably the part of the game where I've died most on. It has to do with a certain weather puzzle that I don't believe is working quite as intended. For said puzzle, the two purple Kedama that are chasing us need to stay alive. They possess a weather effect that boosts our jumps, kind of like the one the Wind Fairies had. The problem is, if you kill them, they will not respawn. If you do so anyway, you will be stuck in front of a jump that you practically cannot clear. But is that all there is to it? Nope. Those maniacal seeming maneuvers we're doing here do have a purpose. We need to clean the path of all the other enemies. If we don't do so before making the jump, chances are high we'll be knocked straight out of the air into the pit. All in all, it can be a pretty frustrating and confusing puzzle for new players, as in the what am I even doing wrong kind of way. We are lucky to have made it past unscathed, but will we stay that way? None of these new fairies have a say in it. They are kind of hard to define, but I like to call them light fairies, because their bullets are so nice and shiny. They aren't actually too bad, as their attacks take very long to go off. It makes them kind of predictable. As long as you don't underestimate their range, they shouldn't cause much trouble. Coming up is a weather puzzle that at first just seems to rehash the use of the Tornado Kedama, when what it really does is that it introduces a secondary puzzle-solving effect to them. One where these hotspots appear that let you summon keystone platforms. This kind of gimmick will pose quite a challenge throughout the stage, for not only can it be tricky to land on those keystones, but you're also under time pressure. Once the weather effect wears off, all these platforms will disappear. With hardships like that ahead of us, I'm happy about at least one thing. We have purchased pretty much everything we've ever needed from the shop. Those moves that we have equipped, the finest of the fine. At least in my opinion, that is. This one, for example, is called Chompiras Missiles. It really deserves the name of the homing category. You just hold down the button and it will find and destroy everything it comes across. It might not do it in the priorities that you want it to, but what game can read your thoughts? The answer? One that is evil and cursed. No thanks to that. Just a few seconds ago, you have seen a first of something. We have used an enhanced melee combo, Keystone Offensive. I really hate to admit it, but I very rarely use these kinds of moves. What can I say, they just don't find their way into my playstyle. Another way to say it would be that their usage is not part of my instinct. There is a reason that's holding me back when it comes to changing that. They do cost feral energy, a resource that I'd much rather use on shots or supers 95% of the time. I'm not at all saying that they're crap. I have seen people use active skills to great effect before. That brings us to a feature of Tenjou no Tempest that I really appreciate. It's got so much depth. You often run into action games where one ability or maneuver works better than anything else. Not so here. It's one of those games where there's more than just one absolute right way of playing it. Most important for doing well at it is keeping your cool, staying in control. If you don't, you will panic and make bad decisions, and ultimately you will fail, which can look somewhat like this. That's the first death of the LP. I guess as punishment, we're gonna have to redo the last 3 minutes. Except not, because we possess the wonders of technology. They let us jump right to where we have met our previous end. Still, I'm a bit miffed about that. Taking a rest where it's safe, instead of rushing forward blindly, could have prevented that. Dying sends you back to the beginning of a segment and also noticeably lowers your end of stage bonus. But on the bright side, you do have infinite lives in this game. I would know, I've died about 20 or so times in my initial playthrough. This time, we have made it to the end of the segment in one piece. The next one that awaits can be a bit compared to the elevator ride from last time, in that it goes at its own pace rather than the one we would want for it. Nonetheless, the ride on this log is not completely uninteractive. There will be times where we must use our weather-altering powers to help our poor man's raft advance. This is one of such points. The weather from the water spout in Kedama will make the water level rise. That submerges the rock that is in our way, and we can continue on. It's an ability that they've always had, it just never became relevant until now. All in all, we have a relatively slow-moving string of puzzles in front of us. It may not look all that exciting, but when you play it yourself, you shouldn't underestimate it. Because you see, that ever so calm-looking water will in fact kill us if we decide to take a dive in it. It's alright to lightly brush it as long as you can save yourself with a jump or dash, but should you ever sink in it fully, it will be just as deadly as any pitfall. That's right, even plain water is more dangerous than the hot molten lava from hell. Really begs the question, what is in this river? What makes it so murderous? I think I know the answer to that, and I even know who's to blame. It must have been the jokester who sent a lifetime supply of dried prunes to the kappa upstream. Simply speaking, that log we're using, it's not the only one you'll find in this river. Our current obstacle has to be overcome in the reversed way of the previous two puzzles. Catching the effect of a streaming spirit will lower the water level. And that lets us somehow pass under the levitating hill from before. Oh, you crazy video game logic, you. The explanation is actually a simple one. This is Gensokyo. If its inhabitants can fly, why not its geology? Besides, this is like the 30th gravity-defying structure we have encountered. Not actually sure why I brought this up. Unfortunately, this is the point where we must leave our faithful piece of driftwood behind. It will always live on in our hearts. To move on, we must lower the water level 3 more times, now only 2. If you have countered additional streaming spirits before, it will of course be less than that. Once we've done that, a piece of the shore will be revealed on the other side, and that's what we need to reach. Getting over there requires a pretty tight jump, one that always makes me feel a bit uneasy before tackling it. But it worked out fine for us. Getting sick of those puzzles yet? Of course you don't. There's still a few more up ahead. The effect of the Icicle Fairy lets us safely traverse this part of the lake here. And when it comes to this shabby broken down elevator, a hearty lightning bolt is all it takes to get those gears going again. One fortunate thing about those is that the lightning bolt doesn't have to hit directly. As long as the elevator is on screen as it happens, it will get repaired. Anything else would have been very annoying. The elevator we saw on the right there is a little bit different though. It will get fixed automatically once we pass a certain point of the level. I believe it is right above it. Well, either that or I'm solving whatever puzzle you're supposed to do each time by accident. Puzzle here, puzzle there, Puzzles are everywhere in this stage, but you know, it's something that really shapes this game's identity, makes it memorable. There's only few games I can think of that feel all too similar to Tenjou no Tempest, but if I had to pick a more mainstream one to compare it to, it would be Beautiful Joe. That one's a pretty cool game too, and I do think it fits. It has gimmick puzzles and counter-based action, but what you'd never find in it is this technique. My very favorite super of them all, Scarlet Weather Rhapsody of all humankind. It's incredibly badass, but it costs a whole 6 energy units. If used cleverly, it's worth every single one of them. Small disclaimer, I might not use it all that cleverly, perhaps even very stupidly. The spell itself is a reference to Tenshi's last spell card of Touhou 10.5, and therefore stands as the culmination of her celestial powers. Now here's where we have to be both swift and careful. Lots of enemies around to disrupt us in our leaps. They may throw you off in a way that makes you press the wrong button, which is what I did here. Well, that kind of stinks. Luckily, the elevator we saw earlier should be active at this point. It is indeed intended as a shortcut, for such tragic occasions like we have just suffered. And what do we see? Yes, it's as good as new now. A small detour like that is no big deal, especially compared to our death from before. I'm still kind of ashamed about that, and thinking back to it, there are a good few countermeasures that could have prevented it from happening. For example, I don't think the supers in our style setup are really all that sensible together. Peerless Blade and Scarlet Weather Rhapsody don't really complement each other much, and are both very expensive moves. Had I picked State of Enlightenment instead of the Blade, or even something lame like Scarlet Weather Persuasion, it might have gotten us out of harm's way. Moral of the story, don't underestimate the cheap abilities. They have their uses. Anyways, we have made it past our previous complications. What awaits us now is a gauntlet of enemies, wildfires, and spikes. It takes more than just skillful platforming and capturing weather effects. In fact, this time, not getting a certain type of weather is the solution. The purple Kedama and light fairies carry an effect that excites the wildfires, makes them burn all high, as we can witness right here. It's all in all best to stay clear of these enemies or just use anything that is not your sword. Otherwise, you will be severely slowed down by these flame pillars. You can still dash through them if you're bold, but usually it's neither smart nor healthy. When you reach this alcove for the first time, you might be confused what the game even wants from you. The answer has to do with the streaming spirits. Yes, something good can actually come out of these pests. Their weather effect makes it so that your dashes and dodges won't cost spirit orbs anymore. Moreover, you're allowed to link air dashes together infinitely. Normally, you can only use a single one of them until touching ground again. In other words, it lets you fly around with full invincibility. It's pretty hilarious. Too bad I often forget it exists. But if you don't, you can bypass some very hairy situations with it. If you're chicken, take Tenchi as an example. She never runs away from a fight. She's a brave little princess. If she ever screams in terror or cries for help, it's only to confuse her enemies so that she can tiptoe to a more strategic position. Or so Tenchi would tell you. Isn't it strange that those strategic positions are far away from any danger? The final segment of the stage consists of only a single encounter, but it's one that can evoke pure unbridled hate in you. You have to face the mini-bosses from stages 2 and 4 again, all while being harassed by way too many purple Kedama. The Kedama are divided in 2 separate waves, but regardless, if you fight them conventionally, they will kill you dead. So instead, get one of the weather effects from the superior fairies as soon as you can. I personally think it's better to aim for the greater ice fairy first. Not only is freezing all enemies more reliable, but it's also easier to get than the fire fairy's thunderstorm. As mentioned before, that does it for the stage itself. Now after a quick replenish of our energy, we are ready to face yet another boss. It is someone that our oddball friend Futo has already hinted at, Suako Moria. And it seems we have landed the jackpot with her, as she immediately reveals that she is indeed a villainous villain of villainy. At the same time, however, she has the nerve to accuse us as being just as guilty as her, for it was Tenji who presented the magical keystones to the humans. Tenji should have known that the humans would overuse these stones to entrap too many earthquakes before they were released. The resulting overload can be seen as the wrath of the earth, a revenge for defiling it. Does Tenji care about any of this moral talk? Of course not. Why should she have any sympathy for some tree-hugging extremist? We're gonna beat her up good. The main theme of Suako's battle is the summoning of mythical beasts and elementals. I've gotta be honest, I don't know quite what the very first one is, but from the looks of it, we could just pretend that it's Onyx from Pokemon. Basically, a giant rock snake. One thing that holds true for all of these summons is that you can attack them to damage Suako's life bar. It's not very effective though, and it won't even hurt the amulet, so going for Froggy any chance you can is still what you want to do. The best opportunity here for doing so is when both the head and tail of Onyx peek out of the earth. Anything else to this phase? Well yeah, always stay away from Onyx's tail blade. The game always treats it like a hazard. One with a very large hitbox, I might add. The next pattern is about Suako's signature iron rings. The difficulty here is that the rings can only be used for an activation when they're yellow, and they only turn so when they bounce. But there's even more to watch out for than just that here. When Suako throws out this black orb, avoid it like the plague, because that's kind of what it is, the only affliction in the game. If you conduct it, your spirit orb and health regeneration will be severely hampered. The duration of the status effect is pretty long, but causing weather will clean it off immediately. That's something you need spirit orbs for. I think you can see the problem there. But we are over that now and just blazing through this fight. But will that continue now that Master Longlimbs is around? Well, probably. I really don't think this part of the fight is very hard. As always, you want to cause weather here. And the best way of doing so is provoking Master Longlimbs to stomp for you. Before you ask, those lame slow energy orbs that are floating around, they cannot be used for an activation. Would make things all too simple, I guess. In this run, I kind of failed to demonstrate the majority of Master Longlimbs' abilities. When you stay under his hands, he will fire bullets at you. Sounds dangerous, I know. Good thing you have no reason to ever do that. A more relevant attack than that is a vertical energy beam that Suako casts if you behave too aggressively against her. The answer to that is to attack in short bursts. Get a feeling for when the attack comes, and retreat before it does. After only 3 spells this time, we are in for the final spell card. It is the flashier, more intimidating, but also easier alternative in my opinion. It is Suako's Crazy Face. Just kidding, she always has that. It is actually the cursed beast whose taming initialized Suako's rise to power. The founding of her dynasty if you want. The Mishaguji and its many heads. This phase somewhat contradicts what I told you before. You only have to attack the Mishaguji. Suako is there just to confuse you. Activations may be possible on her, but they are meaningless. You cannot harm her. The boss's behavior changes with each head that you destroy, but what always stays the same is that you are flooded with scarlet clouds like it's some kind of bargain sale. It's the game's way of telling you to go wild with supers. And guess what? That's exactly what we're gonna do. Scarlet Weather Rhapsody of all humankind is just so insanely broken here. It can easily take out 2 uninjured heads of the Mishaguji. With all of them vanquished, the resulting backlash exhausts Suako's power, bringing us victory over yet another mighty foe. Back when I first had to face Suako, I found her very tough. I lost multiple times to her. But once you understand her a bit better, she's probably easier than both Nue and Yugi. So, does this mean we have resolved the incident? Hardly, as the Frog Goddess confesses that she was only bluffing about being the culprit. Apart from that, the unstable keystone is still at the summit and is just about to burst from the pressure. Suako further reveals that both Iku and that meddling Yukari are already at the scene. She also gives us a final warning, or maybe it is a threat. Those two don't desire our interference. Since Tenji doesn't like the tone of Little Missy here, she leaves Nue behind to guard her. We wouldn't want that wicked, unpredictable Suako to come around and stab us in the back, even if it means facing our most dangerous enemies alone. Alright, stage 5 might not have gone so smoothly, but it didn't stop us in the end. I'm Gesh86, this was Tenjou no Tempest, and also the longest video I have ever uploaded, and next time, a shocking encounter with a legendary fish. Bis bald!